All right, our next guest has spent years covering baseball at the highest level. Now he's bringing those lessons back to where it all begins, the dugout. Ken Davidoff's the author of 101 Lessons from the Dugout, What Baseball and Softball Can Teach Us About the Game of Life. Ken, really appreciate joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
This is my kind of book. I joked with you, first of all, because each chapter is like 1 to 2 pages. So I'm very accomplished reading it. Um, but, you call this book a book of wisdom for life disguised as a baseball book. What made you want to take that approach to it?
So basically, I have to credit my co-author, Jason. His name is Harley Rothbart. Harley is a retired pediatrician and longtime parenting expert. And this book was his vision. He having he loves the game, coaches kids in little league and high school baseball, and then having dealt with young people for the entirety of his professional life, and he could see their trials and their challenges and their triumphs. And so he kind of put those two together. And then it turned out by serendipity, we had the same literary agent, Lisa Leshney, and she put us together. And Harley said, Ken, I'd like to you be my co-author and kind of infuse the book with your perspective as someone who covered the game at the highest level. And as you alluded to, like I wrote about baseball for a long time. I didn't write about stuff like this. I wrote about losing streaks and trades and injuries. And I loved my career, proud of it, but I got burned out and I quit 4 years ago. So writing about baseball this way for me was so refreshing and energizing and rewarding.
I got burned out and quit coaching little kids.
Oh my goodness.
Jeff coached his son. He gave me all the warnings before my kids are now 6 and 9 as they start to play. So Jeff gave me all the warnings all along.
There's so many lessons for kids to learn. It's the parents that are the problem. The kids. So from your research, from what you talked to with regard to your co-author, what did you learn about, if anything, lessons about dealing with parents and how that impacts the kids?
Well, we certainly have some less. Look, this book is not an expose, Jeff. This
Right.
is not a takedown of any institutions or authority figure. I'd say this is more inspirational, aspirational, this book. But I think we certainly allude to the kind of issues you're talking about, and that's in the back of the book, and we have a chapter on the coach's signs and the coach's coaching. Those are chapters 86 and 85, respectively. And in both of those cases, the idea is like you should go into your relationship with your coach ready to listen to your coach and follow direction, but also acknowledging that sometimes the coach doesn't have the best advice. And that can apply to all of your authority figures, including your parents, in some sad instances. So yeah, that's the way. And we also, at the start of our book, we encourage parents and their children to read this book together, and to talk about this book and to talk about these lessons and hopefully absorb them and apply them.
Well, that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on so badly is that this is important for kids and parents to sit down together because sometimes their interests diverge while being similar. And parents look at things from a different perspective from a kid. And one of the things that I learned as a coach was to constantly remind kids that this is still a game. Like the perspective that they lose so quickly and the innocence that they lose is something that this book teaches kids and parents that this is something that you still need to have.
Yeah, obviously I agree with you, Jeff. And that's our very first chapter is keeping score, give 110% self-respect. And just a quote from the book, you are much more than just a list of your accomplishments. It's not only what you do, but how you do it that counts in the scorebook of your life.
And I was reading that on the airplane when I was traveling last week, and I was sitting next to my 9-year-old, and so we were talking about that because he's kind of learning baseball. My kids are the perfect age for this. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old who are both playing, and I can complain to Jeff about the long hours at the field, but I can love them kind of figuring life out and learning lessons. And literally the last thing I tell them every time they go to play is have fun. Like you'll learn,
Hmm.
I know they'll struggle. I want to see them coached by somebody else. I don't care whether they turn into the best star. I care that they figure out how to be a good person and the lessons that they can get through this. And I'm just curious, with the keeping score chapter, is that harder in this environment, given that kids are always comparing stats and the highlights they see on TV as opposed to what it used to be?
Oh, I don't, there's no doubt. Yes, Jason, it is harder. And not to you mentioned the kids comparing stats and highlights, and then there's the parents doing the same thing, right? And yeah, that's why look, this as I said, this book is aspirational, and we're hoping to provide a little bit of a check and balance against some of the ways that the world has trended.
You have the luxury of having the perspective of not just kids but also major league ball players, which a lot of
Hmm.
people don't have. And you had David Wright, an all-time Met, write the forward to it. What did you learn, or how many people did you talk to from Major League Baseball about these kinds of lessons?
Well, Jeff, I don't want to mislead you or your listeners. Like we didn't really report this book out. This book
Mm-hmm.
was really the brainchild of Harley, my co-author, and then my contribution was to apply all of the conversations I had had over the 30 years covering Major League Baseball. So, I think but I didn't interview anyone explicitly for this book besides David Wright, who was kind enough to write the forward. And then
Right.
we had some endorsements from Reggie Jackson, Joe Girardi, Bernie Williams, Carol Hutchins, who was the all-time winningest NCAA softball coach. So they all read the book. But so I think and that's my answer to your question, I think.
My 9-year-old is starting later. So, a bunch of kids have been playing since they were 5, 6 years old. My
Hmm.
9-year-old, this is his second full season of playing. So he is number 10 in the batting order. And so
Mm.
I found the batting order chapter and the starting lineup very interesting about how you talk to kids about, I'm the bench player. I'm not one of the best, that mindset and continue to build confidence. Can you talk about that chapter a little bit?
Yeah, Jason, that's one of my favorite. That's chapter 4, the batting order. Labels people give you adjusting to a new role. And as you said, just because you hit last doesn't mean you're the worst. I mean, and like sort of quote from the book, you're only a number nine hitter if you believe the label and start to think like a number nine hitter. As you play through the innings of your life, you determine your own success at the plate, regardless of how you are labeled by others, and you will be labeled by others. So what you have to do, and I know it's easier said than done, but that goes to anything in life, is to fight through that, right? To fight through those labels and prove that you're more than just a label.
And I keep telling him, like, he turns over the lineup. If he gets on base, he comes,
Right.
the leadoff hitter has a man on that he can now go and do things. So it's interesting, the chapter about, playing time and sometimes playing time isn't fair. And they rotate innings. And I joke with Jeff about it sometimes, sometimes you feel like you're watching the Bad News Bears. Other times you feel like you're out there watching your kids see, and other times they're on the bench and they're trying to understand why they're not out there. Talk about the playing time chapter and how you find the line between players accepting their position, but also being able to healthily advocate for what they want to be. So, like, my son wants to be more.
Hmm.
His coaches are playing him based on what they see and what they can grow.
Yeah, Jason, that's actually one of my favorite chapters. As someone who didn't receive much playing time as a young person and wish I had the tools to advocate for myself better. So that's chapter 3, playing time, the right attitude when life is unfair. Speak up for yourself. And to address your specific question from the book, it's okay to question your playing time if you do it politely and respectfully. Coach, it's not fair. I'm as good as the kids you put in the lineup and work twice as hard, but they get to play more than me, isn't polite or respectful. Coach, what do I need to do to get in the game more? I'll work harder, come earlier to practice for extra batting or fielding drills. Whatever it takes is both polite and respectful. It also can remind the coach that you're not playing a lot.
Yeah, it's so much easier said than done, though.
It is.
It,
I get it.
it's like telling my kid, like, politely ask the coach if you can do this, and it's like, well, show the coach what you're willing to do instead of asking them.
Mm,
And so I found it interesting how, Harley worked with you to reframe basically every situation that these kids find themselves in. I mean, that's at its heart, this seems more about a mental health book covered in baseball as opposed to a baseball book covered in mental health when you really look at it in terms of development for people. Is that correct?
Jason, it's funny you say that. Just this morning, I was talking with my agent Lisa about an event we're doing together, and Lisa said this is a parenting book covered in baseball, so
Yeah.
not altogether dissimilar. But yeah, you're right. At the this book, baseball is the entry point, but yeah, it is about mental health and parenting and living well, hopefully.
It's also a life lesson book and almost an adulting book because that lesson that you and Jason just talked about is something that we can apply to all of our jobs now. If we don't,
Yeah,
if we in finding a way to ask for something or finding a way to put yourself forward without complaining about it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. And it's funny. I think the first indication I got, like, oh, this really can apply to all of us, is when I showed the book to Joe Girardi last summer. And Joe is a discriminating guy. He's not, he's not out there shilling for many products or anything like that. And when he was so delighted by the book and to read his blurb that's on the back of the book, the lessons to be learned from baseball and softball are endless and this book displays them beautifully. I think it's brilliant. And to get that kind of validation from Joe Girardi was very heartening and made me appreciate, okay, maybe this can be more than just a book for young people.
By the way, I think Jason may have missed the Carol Hutchins reference,
Uh-huh.
which so Jason went to Rutgers, I went to Michigan, and
Let's
we're
go
gonna.
blue.
That's
Oh,
right. So
I didn't
we're
even get to tell you, Ken.
but the Carol Hutchin reference was I was saving it till the end, but she is a great former softball coach for the
Yeah,
University
the
of
one
Michigan.
winningest in the NCAA
Right.
history.
But I did want to talk to you about the strikeout thing because I think it is another baseball has so many lessons, and this book
Yeah.
shows how many there are. But can you talk a little bit about strikeouts and how important it is and the lesson you can get from swinging at a pitch?
Yeah, well, it's funny, Jeff. So we have two chapters. Chapter 13 is the called strikeout, take a chance, try again. And chapter 14 is the swinging strikeout, make good decisions, right and wrong. So the two ways you don't want to strike out are looking at a pitch that you should have swung at or swinging at a pitch that you shouldn't have swung at, right? If you swing through a pitch that you should have swung at, that say a lot of you gave it your best shot. So the called strikeout, chapter 13, is the idea of don't, be aggressive. Don't let a good opportunity pass you by, whether it's a meatball pitch or a chance to, star on the school play or whatever the opportunity is. And then the swing strikeout is make good decisions, right and wrong. And obviously, when you swing at a pitch, you have your strike zone, and you want to make good decisions within that strike zone. So those are the two chapters there.
I've had both ends of that conversation in the last week. My 6-year-old goes up there and he's ready to hit from the second he gets in the box. My 9-year-old second guesses himself after not swinging. And we were literally in the conversation based on what I read in the book of would it feel better, if you obviously want to get a hit, but if you're not going to get a hit, would you like it better if you swung and missed or if you didn't swing at all? And
Right.
we were talking about like how he would feel based on each one. And so his goal for the next game is to swing, whether he
Hmm.
hits it or not.
Right.
His last goal was to stand close enough to the box that he didn't worry that he was going to get hit. His next goal is to swing the bat, not just stand there and take the pitches because he can get the
Right.
walks, but he wants to get the hit. And so I've literally had both ends of those conversations in the last week on a baseball field with the kids.
That's awesome. That's great.
The bases loaded moments is something for kids and adults. I mean, especially adults, actually, as life gets more pressure packed. We just keep piling things on, and parents, you just feel like the bases are always loaded for you,
Yeah.
basically. Talk about how baseball can help people understand pressure situations and how perspective helps, and how you dove into that in the book.
Yeah, so we have three chapters on bases loaded. From there's the first one is as the hitter, bases loaded, part one, dealing with pressure, sticking with what works, and then part two is as a base runner, uh, respect others, set a good example, and then part three is as the pitcher, plan ahead, ask for advice. So, with as a hitter, the idea is stick with what works. So yeah, it's a high pressure situation But is Harley and I taught this one through in particular because from my vantage point, the most pressure should be on the pitcher, not on the hitter, right? Because they got nowhere to hide the pitcher, whereas the batter should be getting some good pitches to hit. So the idea with the pitcher is with the batter, excuse me, is treat it the same way that you would treat any other at bat, because and you are, in the catbird seat there a bit. So don't put that pressure on yourself because the pressure should be on the pitcher. And bases loaded part two, respect others, set a good example. So runners must always be aware and respect what the runners ahead of them are doing. Uh, Whenever you have the opportunity, look ahead, not behind. But if you move ahead too fast without respecting others in your path, you may run right into a double play. So just keep an eye on what's going on in front of you.
which
And
happens in
then
life all the time. You run
exactly.
into like that's why it's not just a kid's book.
No,
It's a life book.
yeah, I mean it's written. Look, it's written in a vernacular for kids, right? There's a lot of analogies to school and a lot of references to parents and grandparents. But yeah, I like I was saying with Joe Girardi's validation, I was just I that's when I really started to appreciate that this could be for everyone. And then for the pitching component, bases loaded part three, plan ahead, ask for advice. Oh, I'm sorry. This is for fielders. I apologize. Yeah, so fielders again, that's plan ahead, right? What am I going to do if the ball is hit to me here? As the fielder. So life can be complicated with lots of choices to make. When the bases are loaded, you need to plan ahead, imagine what you're going to do before tough decisions come up. And the same thing, think about all the potential turbulence you encounter every day in your life and how much it can help to plan ahead when you can.
It seems like an overarching theme of this book is perspective. It is figuring out what the perspective is for each of these situations. But it also seems like another theme, at least I saw, was being present
For
in
sure.
the moment. And so can you talk a little bit about how important it is to be present when you're playing baseball and in life?
Yeah, yeah, Jeff. I mean, I think, look, there's more distractions than ever in our world, right? Which is why one of the reasons I was so drawn to this book is because I am a parent myself. My son is now about to graduate from college, but I witnessed his childhood and I thought, oh my God, it's so much harder than when I was a kid. Because of all these distractions and cell phones and social media and the pressures we put on them too often. Start thinking about college way too early and start thinking about their resumes way too early. So it's more challenging than ever to be present, as you said, but I think more vital than ever.
Another chapter that I really like focus kind of adapting to life, the curveball. When you're
Yeah.
expecting something and it changes and I don't know that kids realize how much they're learning in the moment, but talk about how important it is to be able to adapt when something happens that you're not expecting, like the curveball.
Like the curveball and just the idea that like you said, Jason, expecting one thing and something else comes your way and just the ability to compose yourself and make the adjustment. So as the pitches come in, I still remember the first time I saw a curveball when I was playing Little League. I had no shot. I was not ready for that. It was Robbie Cole, who's still a friend of mine, now a very successful attorney. He could really spin a curveball. But yeah, there's so many curveballs that come in life. And just the idea like, okay, it's all right. Not what I expected, but gotta just be fleet of foot here and make the adjustment as well as I can and learn for the next time.
All right, we're going to divert from the book just for just a short while, so that you can gloat. The last guest we had was Terry Mills, so
Oh my God. T for two.
that's right. So here's your chance to tell us how much you enjoyed the national championship.
Yeah, Jeff was there, and so we
Were
spent
you?
all of
Yes,
last
I
week's
was.
show talking about it. Yeah, Jeff travels to support all of your Michigan winning. I'm a Rutgers grad who is not familiar with that all. He has he has now taken to telling me that I should enroll in an online Michigan course so I can join in the celebrations of a winning school. That's where we are right now, Ken.
Oh my goodness. So first of all, let me express my affection for Rutgers. I grew up in Middlesex County in Edison, so I
There
have
you go.
a lot of a fondness for Rutgers, and I went to too many bars there, from roughly 1989 to 1995-ish.
Old Queens.
Yes, Old
Yeah.
Queen's Tavern. That's
East
right.
Brunswick.
I
So
was trying to think of the name of it. Yes, Old Queen's Tavern.
Nightclub,
Absolutely.
Old Queens.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
plenty an evening at the many different establishments around New Brunswick.
Yeah, outside of Ann Arbor, that's probably the bar I went to most at that in that time frame. So anyway, Ann Arbor, yeah, that was pretty glorious and just amazing, right? I mean, Dusty May, my God, I mean, 2 years ago when we hired him, I don't think any of us could have envisioned this, no matter how high we were on him. And he's, applying the lessons we've been discussing here for the last 20 minutes. Like, think of all the curveballs that have come to college sports with NIL and the transfer portal. And I don't think anyone handles those curveballs better than Dusty May. I mean, the next time he complains about anything will be the first. He just, okay, these are the playing rules. Okay, you got it. And he engages and he put together a fantastic roster. I know it's gotten some flack for being replete with transfers, but it is what it is. That's the way the game is played now. And we had a terrific team, and I was absolutely thrilled. And I probably would have tried to make it to Indy, Jeff, if not for this darn book tour, which to make clear, I am very much enjoying.
but it doesn't, you mentioned Dusty May. Part of your one of your books is adapting to life, and
Yeah.
and that's what Dusty has done, is he has found a way to adapt to a whole set of rules, and more importantly, to convince young adults to do the same. People criticize him for bringing people from all these different places. He's not the only one that's
Mhm.
doing it, and more importantly, he found guys that were willing to adapt to a system so that they all got along and worked well together instead of showcasing their own abilities.
There's no doubt about it. And like I'm to break away from any book context. Like, it's not like he got the five best players. It's not like he got,
Mhm.
I mean, Luxembourg was on UAB, and Mara was not the best player on UCLA, and same with Johnson. I
Wasn't even a
know,
starter.
right? Johnson on Illinois. So yeah, there's that. It just doesn't. It defies the desired narrative. Oh, he just spent the most money on the best guys. No, that's not what happened. He envisioned a roster and put it together brilliantly.
I just have to ask the Michigan fan question because I find fandom cool. Terry Mills thought it was awesome to be able to go in the locker room and talk to them before the game, having been the first team that then would go on to win a title since his team.
Mhm.
You were there at the height of pleasure and pain with the Fab Five and then the timeout. How
Mhm.
cool was it to finally get your team to win since you've been there?
Yeah, it was awesome. So it's pretty interesting that now you know all my history. So 1989, Michigan Seton Hall, I was a high school senior growing up in New Jersey, knowing that I was going to Michigan. So that was kind of a no-lose game for me. Like, if had Michigan lost that game, I would have been thrilled for PJ Carlesimo and the Pirates. Because Michigan won, I was thrilled because I was going there. And I remember the next day I wore my Michigan shorts to JP Stevens High School, and I was very excited that way. But yeah, but it's 37 years. That's a long time, man. It's a long time. And I covered as you mentioned, the Fab Five in '93. I was in New Orleans for Chris Webber's infamous timeout, and I was a junior the year before. We got clobbered by Duke, and then John Beeline took them to the finals twice and couldn't cross the finish line. So yeah, very, very rewarding and heartening. And I wish I had been there.
Yeah, well, Jeff is still waiting for all of his gear to come. So
Well, I do have one question about your
Yeah.
your time at Michigan. And
Mhm.
Michigan Daily seems to have been a big influence on
Oh
you
yeah.
and a lot of people. How important is the education system of having school newspapers?
Oh, I think it's so important, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, I'm a adjunct professor now at a college in Massachusetts, Endicott College in Beverly, Massachusetts, and I have some students who are involved with the newspaper, and I see the real world experience they're still getting, even it's digital operation now, obviously. But yeah, the daily and the story I've told is I wrote the Michigan Daily's column on the Weber timeout game, the column. And boy, did it stink. I mean, it was terrible. I forgot to include the final score. So, it's like you could infer that Michigan lost,
Huh?
but the column did not conclusively say that Michigan lost. But nevertheless, when I was applying for jobs right after that, that was my senior year, I graduated without a job, and I sent out all my clips, as we call them. And a gentleman named Jim Miller looked at that column and he was generous. He said, tell me about this column. Tell me about the circumstances that you wrote this. I said, well, Jim, it was the NCAA championship game. I had about an hour to interview people and write up something. And I believe I hand wrote it and dictated it over a landline to someone in Ann Arbor. And I think Jim was just impressed with that process and like that I was ready for prime time because I had written for the Michigan Daily and covered big time sports.
I'm going to close with the book, but I love stories like that. I think stuff like that is awesome and just kind of makes people who they end up becoming when you go through experiences like that. I'm going to ask you the advice question for a young athlete and parents who are going to be out at baseball and softball fields this weekend. For athletes, what's the mindset they should take on the field? For parents, what should they keep in mind?
Gosh, I think it's the same for both, and I'm just going to echo you, Jason. Have fun, because it's so easy to get weighed down by all the pressure but like these are beautiful. It's a beautiful game, and I'm biased because I covered the sport for such a long time, but I do believe it's more accessible than other sports, and in large part because of the slower pace, relative to other sports. So. Yeah, I get it. You want to achieve, you want to do things in life, but by golly, just please enjoy it while you're doing it. Make it a joy, not a task.
The book is 101 Lessons from the Dugout, What Baseball and Softball Can Teach Us About the Game of Life. Whether you've got a kid stepping up to the plate this weekend or you're the one sitting in the stands, it's a great reminder that what happens goes on the field goes much further after the game. Ken, we really appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us and best of luck with the book.
Thank you both, guys. Pleasure to meet both of you. And Jeff, go blue. And
Go
Jason,
Blue.
Rutgers is always in my heart. Michigan is at Rutgers this fall, I believe.
One day, Ken. One day.